Well, Joel, I'm so excited to have you on the Collide Kids podcast today.
Hello.
I mean, I have lots of friends and I like making friends, but we are friends before the podcast and now you're here. I don't know how to get out of that.
We were joking beforehand. I mean, we started our podcasts around the same time,
Yeah.
back around COVID started. And then I forget, I think I reached out to you and I was like, hey, I'd like to have you on the podcast just to kind of talk about your podcast and music.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not like my thing. My thing's more
But
like
okay.
kids stuff, but sure.
Yeah.
And then we became friends. And then, we've talked about doing the opposite. And then now I finally wrote a kids book. This is really the
Yes.
only reason. I wrote a kids book so I could finally make it on the
Just so
Clyde
you
Kids
could be on my
podcast.
show.
Like, oh my gosh. Once I do this, I can finally reach back out to Christian and be like, hey, Christian, I did it. Can I be on your podcast now,
That's
please?
right. Well,
So-
you're here. Congratulations. You've made it. Would you just introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So my name is Joel Arcieri. My author name is actually my middle name. It's Joel Conwell.
Okay.
Because it's a lot easier to spell than Arcieri. So that's why I did that. But I live in Greenville, South Carolina, which is the best Carolina.
Oh,
And
I have to fight you on
what-
that one.
oh yeah, you gonna find me on that? No, we're way better down here. But I live in South Carolina with my wife Joanna, and I have 3 kids: Lucy, Nora, and Edmund. Yes, Lucy and Edmund are Chronicles of Narnia because
Yes.
C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia, my favorite.
I love it.
But I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor for forever, so I grew up as a pastor's kid, and then I got my master's in counseling, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And then I started working in the church, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And then I started working in corporate America. Still undecided, but like really if that's what I want to do. But what I really found out that I loved was writing. So I've been writing music since I was in middle school. I have a band, and we have our 6th album coming out in a couple weeks, actually. And we've done worship music there. And then I started writing actual books a few years ago. And my first book was not a kid's book. It was more of like a corporate America book. And then I had this idea for a kid's book that I'll explain a little bit more later. But then I wrote the kid book called The Boy in the Tree. And so right now, that's kind of like my life is I'm a parent. I have a day job, and then like my side thing that I really love to do is writing, whether it's music or books. So that's me.
Very cool.
What do I like to do for fun? I like to work out, which sounds really lame. I like to play video games with my kids. Minecraft is a fun game we like to play. And then music, and I feel like I'm boring. It's like I have 3 hobbies. Kind of.
I really like, you can tell that you used to have a podcast because you just asked yourself a question and then answered it. So I like that. You're like interviewing
We're
yourself.
the easiest guests.
You really are. Well, let's get into your story. But before we do that, because this is a show for kids, I always ask my guests to tell me a joke. So do you have a joke for us today?
I do. And you know what? I had to look this one up in all transparency because I am terrible at jokes.
Okay.
But anyway, my joke is this. What do you call a sad strawberry?
Sad strawberry. I don't know.
It's a blueberry.
Oh,
blueberry.
It is a blueberry. That's so sad.
It's a little blueberry.
Okay, so let's talk about your book. It's called The Boy in the Tree. What made you decide? Oh, there it is. I love it. What made you decide you wanted to write a kid's book? Because like you said, you're doing podcasting, you're working at the church, you are working corporate America, and you're like, I got an idea for a kid's book. How did that come about?
So it's really interesting because my journey, right, through being a pastor's kid, then getting exposed to counseling and getting a master's in counseling, and then kind of diving into that world and started to see just like how people relate to themselves and the world around them. And I saw that, and then I went to corporate America and saw corporate America, the church, very similar in the sense of like all the gaps that people have in their lives and why we live out frustrations, how we live out frustrations, and what happens when we're not like living the right way or living for the Lord, right? And so as I kind of explored that, I thought, man, I really would like to talk more about that idea. And a friend of mine said, no one cares unless you wrote a book. And I said, noted. And so she said, unless you write a book, no one's going to listen to you talk about anything. And I said, that's fine. So I wrote a book called Your Missing X Factor, which was really just like an idea of, can you be the most yourself how can you be the most yourself in any circumstance without compromising or manipulating? The idea of just being like, you're not that person that is a puppet master, but you're you,
Mhm.
who the Lord's wired you to be, how the Lord's made you with biblical principles as backing. And no one read it, which is fine. You know, it's fine. It's whatever.
I'd
Uh,
love to read it. Where is it? I wanna read it.
it's on Amazon. It's
Okay.
called Your Missing X Factor.
Okay.
But I wrote that, right, and I was trying to target that specific audience of people that were in, like corporate America, or adults, parents, young adults, kind of thing. And then I was going through counseling because I had my own issues I was working through.
Mhm.
And my wife and I, we have 3 kids, right? We have gone through different seasons of, she had postpartum really bad, and then I had some issues that I was working through, anxiety, depression, some dark thoughts that I had when I was younger, and then just were gone, and then they hit me really hard when we were pregnant with Edmund. And so I'm like, what is going on? So I started to go to counseling, and I go to the specific type of counseling called EMDR, which is fantastic. If you ever have anything in your life that you want to work through, trauma, issues that you've had in your life, EMDR is the best because it's emotional, it's eye movement disassociation reprogramming, I think. And essentially it's removing the physical reaction that you have to trauma or anything in your life that causes those anxieties. And then you start, you have your heart palpitations, shortness of
Mhm.
breath, tingles, all that kind of stuff. And it helps you get past those physical manifestations and automatic reactions, and then reprograms it with a positive. To me, it's like one of the most beautiful ways the Lord has enabled us to kind of like tweak the body's natural response that happens as a result of sin, right? Because if sin's been done to us or we've sinned, our body doesn't like it because
Mhm.
God designed our bodies to not take part in that, right? It's not how He's wired us to do it.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is our bodies try to push us away. Like if you hurt your arm, your body naturally, your mind naturally says, well, we're not going to use that arm. We'll use our left arm, right? If I hurt my right arm, right? And it's the same thing emotionally. If we are hurt emotionally, or we have trauma in our past, our body pushes us away from that because we don't want to get hurt more. And this type of counseling helps you actually go into that and then work through it. And
Okay.
so when you basically start counseling, a good EMDR counselor will say, all right, let's do what's called a trauma assessment. And it's basically like, or inventory, we're going to list all the traumas you've ever been through in your life. And they always, what's the earliest one? And I'm like, I'm 30, I'm 34. Like, I don't know. What do you, it's like, okay, what about something that happened when you were a kid that you didn't like? And I thought, I don't know, I got stuck in a tree. He goes, let's talk about that. And so we started talking about it. And lo and behold, I got stuck in a tree when I was a kid, and I was so embarrassed that I never wanted to be embarrassed again. So I tried to control everything and everyone. Like I was manipulator extraordinaire of people
Mhm.
and circumstances and the narrative. And I hated it. And I would always tell people, like when I get embarrassed, I get hot. I start to sweat. My heart rate jumps up through the roof. And I was like, does that ever happen to anyone around me? And they're like, no, just you just get embarrassed. What do you mean? Like, you don't like have a near death experience when you get embarrassed. They're like, no, what are you talking about? So I'm like, there's something wrong with me. But yeah, it's because of that. I had no idea. And so my counselor, he knew that I'd already written a book, that I write music, and he said, why don't you write a story, like, or a poem about it?
Mhm.
Which credit to him as a great counselor, understanding the person you're counseling, and going, this is how they process and how they
Right.
work through things. Let's
Yeah.
have him do that, right? And so I wrote it, and it wasn't finished, but I wrote most of it, and I presented it to him in the next counseling session, and he said, "This is really actually good. You should finish it, and you should publish it into a kid's book." And I never would have said yes to that
Yeah.
like 2 years ago because I wouldn't have already written a book. I wouldn't have discovered I like writing, and have loved doing that. And even the podcast, right? I never would have discovered that I enjoy trying to give language to situations and to people to help them understand things differently, right? Like it's interesting how the Lord's, whether it was pastor's kid, counseling experience, master's podcast, like he's just been developing this idea of understanding emotional intelligence and being able to speak to it in a way that not everyone does. And it's just that story. It's literally just a story of a boy who gets stuck in a tree, and he loves climbing trees, which I did. I'd climb to the very top of any tree. I'd be like feet away from power lines. It didn't matter. But
Wow.
this tree that I find in this story is like, it's so weird because it looks like that. It's like, it was, to me, it was much bigger,
Uh-huh.
but it was like a tree that had kind of like curved or fallen,
Uh-huh.
and it didn't have any limbs. And so I remember I scrambled up to the middle, And the same thing with the story in this here, like the kid scrambles up to the middle and he's like, I can only see ground. And I swear when I was a kid, I was like, I feel like I'm 50 feet up. Now, probably it was like 20 or 30,
Yeah.
but I'm 7, 8 at the time. I have no idea. And I got stuck. And my friends are like, what are you doing? Just get down. I can't. And so my dad has to get an extension ladder and do it all the way to the end and gets me down. And I didn't know, but I had said, I'm never going to feel like that again. And that's basically how the story goes. Is the boy gets stuck. He says, I'm never going to feel like that again. I don't want to do that. And then it just talks about how like that's not how we're supposed to live lives.
Yeah. Always protecting ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Weakness is a part of not just our lives, but a part of taking risks
Yeah.
specifically, because like if you don't take a risk, then you're not going to be, that's you not being okay with the fact that you'll probably fail. And failure's fine.
Yeah.
And that's actually a normal part of life, because if you want to go within the scripture and the gospel, like that's where we are this side of eternity, is we are fallen, but we have been saved by grace through faith. So we'll still stumble, we'll still fall, but Christ is there to catch us and be there with us. But also just in everyday life, like we are not perfect. And to think that we could ever try to make ourselves perfect is either we're going to put way too much pressure on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to put way too much pressure on other people, right? Like I did, like making, they should have known not to do that. And I realized that a lot in the relationships I had, where I would say a lot of that, like, how do they not know how to do that? Or where they should have done this, or blah, blah, blah. And I always had some issue with someone else or something else outside of myself,
Yeah.
because I was so in this controlled mentality of like, everything needs to be this way and in my world and my control. So,
And I love that you put that into a book. I love that your counselor encouraged you to do that. I think that, like you said, that's very
yeah.
wise to know that that's something that's how you process things. And so he was able to help you do that. Tell us a little bit more about this idea of anxiety and that feeling of not being in control. Is that
Yeah.
something that you feel like you deal with every day and you have to always overcome it? Or is it something that's spurred on by like things that happen to you?
It's hard now, right? I mean, you and I were talking about this a little bit. We're older,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like we have, I guess you could say, more handles on it, in the sense that we didn't grow up in this new technology world where like
Yeah.
we were in a world where we didn't know everything, or not everything was available to us. Now everything is available to you and you could know anything you wanted, which isn't always great, especially when you're too young to understand and process.
Right.
But what I've seen though in my own life is, yeah, like, I mean, in full transparency, my anxiety was crazy high this morning, and my kids, I feel terrible because I'm in the car doing school drop off, and my daughter is singing Jesus music, kids sing praise
Mm-hmm.
from like the 1980s. And she's fine and she's cute and she's great, but it's driving me nuts. And then my other kid is like lightly tapping my seat, but it feels like she's hitting me in the back of the head with a boulder. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, Lord, I need your help.
Yeah.
And it really is like, it is an element of some days, like everything is great. And I think part of that is also understanding the limitations too, right? Before I would, like I have a 1-year-old. He's not always going to sleep well. He was sick last week. I was sick last week. So that meant some of the nights we weren't sleeping. If you don't sleep, your body doesn't function well.
Right.
And if you feel though, like I can never be weak, weakness isn't okay, I always have to be strong and push through things, then you're never going to be okay with like understand the fact that if you sleep not well, the next day your brain's not going to function well, which means probably if you already have some type of wrestle with anxiety, you're going to wrestle with it more that day.
Yeah.
But if you didn't want to give yourself that room and understanding, then you're going to be even harder on yourself. And so even like days like this morning, I have to be more gracious with myself in those moments, because like, yeah, I've been sick this weekend. I haven't slept well. Just because I slept well last night doesn't mean I've just made up for like 3 nights of bad sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, some days it is like today where it's a little harder and I kind of have to lean into the Lord more, not like I don't before, but I have to kind of lean into my own weakness too.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, I can't like today's, I can't buffer it with good sleep or better health foods or, exercise or whatever. Like just today's just gonna be a harder day, and understanding that,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'd say for me, I do wrestle with it more than just kind of like, oh, I had a bad event. Here it comes. Sometimes it's just like it's a little bit more present now than it used to be. But continuing to work through it and
Yeah.
give it to the Lord.
And you said something interesting too. You said that weakness is okay. And so for people that have struggle with like feeling like that sense of control, they need that sense of control. To say that weakness is okay, that's really hard, right? So how did you come to that idea and accepting that weakness is
Yeah.
okay?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things. One, scripture is clear, right? Paul said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." His power, Christ's power, is made perfect in my weakness. I mean, my one of my tattoos. I don't have many. I only have them on my left arm. But one of my tattoos is in Latin, "When I'm weak, then I am strong." Just as a reminder to me, as a result of when I got this idea from the book, was weak is okay. Because then it also was an element of, and my wife and I have talked about this literally last night. It was not everything has to be so black and white in the sense of, well, if it isn't this good, then it has to be the worst, right? And I think if you view weakness like that, like weakness isn't okay, then what you're only going to ever see is if any time you show any weakness, it's the worst thing in the world, which then is not great. Mentally, you're gonna explode in some way.
Hmm.
But if you allow yourself to be okay with being weak, which I've had to do, it shows you, okay, there is more grace to be given in the situation. Then also helps me lean into the Lord more, because if not, then I've already written off either like my day or myself or an interaction or a project that I'm doing. And so that's kind of how I came to it, was not just like the book, but also through the counseling, seeing like, hey, I have too much of a black and white view of myself in that way. And then also with scripture, right? Like Christ's power isn't made perfect if I'm never constantly aware of the weakness in a good way. If I'm like, I'm not weak, then Christ's power can't be manifest in a way that others could see too, which is another element of that, right? Like
Right.
if you're listening to this podcast and you wrestle with weakness, if you never want to ever appear weak, the hardest thing is going to be that there might be someone who is wrestling with the same thing, and they could have used the encouragement of your transparency and your honesty
Yeah.
and your willingness to put yourself in with the Lord and have his power made perfect in your weakness. But because you didn't, they won't. And that's been an interesting journey too, as I've kind of come out with this book. Is more and more people have been like that. I identify with the kid. People my age are like, I identify with the boy in the tree.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm still stuck.
Yeah.
And I'm going, exactly. See, and if I hadn't done that, maybe some of these people might not have had that, and the Lord might not have been able to work in their heart.
Yeah. That's so true. And that's such a good encouraging thing to think about, that our displays of our weaknesses, if we put it out there and we're transparent and vulnerable, it could help someone. I love the
Yeah.
quote, I don't know who said it, that God takes our mess and he makes it our message. So the things that
Ooh,
we
I like
made
that.
mistakes, or the things that we can't do well, or the things that we're just like, this, my whole life is a mess. But God can take that and he could use that to speak to somebody else's life. So that's really
Yeah.
true. And I think that's also true for parents, that if you're a parent and you're listening to this, when we're open and honest about the things that we're struggling with, or things that we're having a hard time with, or maybe we have some anxiety, and just having an open conversation with our kids about that,
Yep.
to the level that they can understand, I think that's helpful for them to process what they're going through, because they might think mom and dad don't understand this because I'm going through
Right.
something in my mind. But if we talk about it as a family, everybody can kind of link arms and say, hey, we're going to get through this together, because we're all struggling with different things.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I wrote this book too, right? I joke, no one read the corporate America book. That's fine. But I did realize though, I mean, I read so many kids' books to my kids.
Hmm.
We max out the like how many you can get at a library every time. I think it's 50 at our local library. We get 50 books. And then we just are like, they just take up our entire kitchen table. Do we read all of them? No. And it was just like, why do we do this? But we read so many kids' books. And I know, as a parent, like when our kids are in that age range where they are just like consuming books all the time and they
Hmm.
want you to read to them, they want to get in your lap still and have you read a book to them. You read a ton of books and you also read the same book a ton of times, right? It's just
Right.
how it is. And it's a great thing. And I realized, okay, there is a group of people that I'm trying to target that aren't going to read this corporate America book. But if I were to write a kid's book, already what I want to do is help the kids. It's also going to help the parent by proximity, because they're
Yeah.
going to read it too. And so what if that's how they have those conversations, right? Is they read the book, the parent goes, the kid asks, what do you mean weakness is okay and whatever? And the parent has to grapple with that. And then they can have an honest conversation with their kid
Absolutely.
where they go, like you said, yeah, I wrestle with that too. I wrestle with being weak when, I'm tired and I feel like I can't parent you well, and I get frustrated easily, and I'm sorry, because I know that's me leaning into that weakness in the wrong way rather than leaning into the Lord. Right.
Yeah.
It helps those conversations happen. So that was another reason why I wrote it too.
That's really cool. I love that. So tell me about your process for writing a book, for writing a kid's book. I know that you said that you came up with this poem for your counseling, and then they're like, "Hey, let's make it a book." But you've written another book. So what's your process? Like, what's that like?
Well, it's interesting too, because I just love writing. So there's this book, The Boy in the Tree, and then my oldest daughter will not let this go because I told her I was going to write another book that would go with this one called The Girl in the House. So that's a book that's going to come out in a couple of years. That's already written, just needs to be edited. And it's for the female side, because a lot of what I think how I write books is I see, like, okay, the things around me in my own life that also are touching the idea of, so for me, it's emotional intelligence, is just like helping people understand themselves and the world around them. But specifically, The Boy in the Tree is about like weakness is okay, and The Girl in the House is about not just asking for help, but like giving of yourself to be able to process things with others, or like, and not just isolating, right?
Yeah.
So The Girl in the House is actually about a girl who hears her parents argue a lot, and it's not like they're having a terrible marriage. It's just more like every day, like today it's hard. Parents argue. My wife and I argue in front of my kids from time to time because life is tough, right? It's not, you can't avoid it. But what happens is the girl hides in her toy house in her room because she feels like she can't talk about things because her parents are always having these issues or they're working through things. And so she just starts to work through things on her own. And then what happens is she grows up and is this boss babe lady who is killing it in corporate America. She has kids, but then her daughter is having a hard time relating to emotions and understanding how. And then she goes like, yeah, actually, I don't know how to talk about emotions. I can talk about goals and sports and like processes or whatever. But when you ask me to start talking about emotions, I don't even know how to access that. And so that's even going to be a story for more of the female side of especially millennials, Gen X's, and even now Gen Z's, it's more about like just killing it, crushing it, doing great whether it's in sports or your profession as a woman, rather than like being able to be this balanced picture of biblical womanhood, which is like yes, you can have this idea of something you strive for and you do, but then also you are like the emotional anchor of your house, of your home in that way, and how you can be that. And so that was even just seeing my sister and my wife, like just seeing how they relate to the world and the conversations we've had about that. It was, okay, there's an idea, right? And I think that's the process. If you're an aspiring writer, the biggest thing you need to be able to do is never say no to yourself when you have an idea. And you have to give yourself the permission to chase that. So for me, it was, I think I need to do a sister book, no pun intended, just like some type of sister book. And then I kind of explored that. And then I have another idea for a book series that's going to be like a when book series. So specifically, we'll have like situations, and it'll just be situations where you could use emotional intelligence. Like, hey, what happens if you're, when it's no one's fault? Like you're supposed to go on this trip and you get sick from being at school and now you can't go on the trip. You don't have anyone to blame, but it feels like all the time we have to try to find someone to blame. And so what do you do when it's no one's fault? Like, how do you let that go? Right. And so that's another book series that is also in the back that I'm working on that I'll eventually do as well. And then I also have a sci-fi novel series that's really fun that I'm working on. That's like, I love it. I've been working on it in the back while I'm doing all this stuff because I need it. And that's the other thing too. If you're a writer, if you really want to write, like I said, don't say no to yourself if you ever had an idea.
Yeah.
And then also have something that you're constantly working on just to keep going that you love. Because the difference is, if all I do is just like this book, then what ends up happening is like your life is sucked into it. And then the good and the bad are way bigger of a deal than they need to be.
Yeah.
So like the good of, oh yeah, people pre-ordered it. But then the bad of like, you don't have anything to do for it this week or the next week while you're working towards publishing, or after it publishes, like you might not have a speaking engagement, or you might not have a bunch of sales. Like, what do you do? and you don't want to stop being creative. So you need something to keep kind of pulling that creativity out of you. So I've been using the sci-fi book series as that way for me.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever publish the sci-fi one, or is that just something you do
Oh,
for fun?
oh yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love that story so much. I can't seriously. My wife is making fun of me because I can't stop writing it, and I'll be up at night just writing and writing and writing. I think the sci-fi novel length that I've done research on that like most people do is 500 pages,
Mhm.
which is about 120,000 words, and I'm about at 85,000 right now. So
Wow. Okay.
so I'm gonna do 3 books too. So
Wow.
it's a lot of fun.
Okay. But I love that that's your fun thing. Like you're like, "Ah, when I
Yes.
need something, I just go." And I love
Yeah.
and you said just always when you have an idea, don't put it away. Like write it down,
Yes.
pursue it, see what you can do with it because
Yes. Chase it.
you never know where it could come from or what could
Right,
happen.
because someone might ask you about something and then you bring that up and they're like, "Oh, I'd love for you to do that," which is another thing too.
Mhm.
If you never explore something that you have an idea of, you may never get the affirmation that the Lord's trying to give you through someone.
Absolutely.
Right? So like case in point, the sci-fi novel, I have a really good friend who loves sci-fi and I was like, "I have this idea, would you read it?" And he said, "Yes, I would read that. And I want you to write this." And that was the thing that the Lord used to say, like, "You need to write this."
Yeah.
And then now I've been able to use that. Like case in point for my wife knows if I'm writing sometimes too, it helps with my anxiety. So if I have anxiety, and that's the idea of, a lot of anxiety comes from I can't control these situations.
Mhm.
I then, and this is my counselor, he was like, this is narrative therapy. It's literally what it is you are controlling something in a healthy way by writing. So I'm creating this scenario, I'm writing this story out. I'm in control of it, but not in a bad way,
Mhm.
in a good way, because I'm also pulling from a positive, which is this creative aspect that the Lord's wired me to use, right? So you are handling the negative with the positive in a positive way. And if you don't do that, then you'll constantly be spinning your wheels or be spiraling in that way.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I love that you can use that for, and so that's such great advice too for people listening. If you're trying to figure out a way to process things, or you have anxiety, or you have some of these issues that you can use creative outlets to kind of help with that. And so that's a great,
yeah.
instead of just like you said, spiraling or getting
Yeah,
upset
like
or whatever, you
exactly.
go put it into sports or put it into music or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's really good advice. I love that. Well, Joel, this has been so fun. Thanks so much for coming on
Yes.
the show and sharing about your book. Show us the cover one more time. I want to see. You kind of like flash through it quickly with
It's
the
The
zoom in.
Boy in the
Ooh.
Tree When Weak is Okay. Also, I love my illustrator. His name is Jeff DeHut. And we are going to be doing, like I said, I'm going to have him probably do the Girl in the House as well. So,
Okay.
but yeah, he was great. I found him through my publisher as well. My publisher is Ripples Media out of Atlanta.
And where can our listeners find out about your book and purchase?
You can buy my book on all these different type of platforms. Amazon. You can go to my website, which is j.conwell
Okay.
or jconwell.org. That's where you can buy it too. You can find the link. My Instagram will be j.conwell_. You can find the book link there too. But you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere. And you can buy a hard copy and or a paperback as well. So
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage our listeners to go check that out, get a hold of this book, read it as a family, have those great
yes,
conversations. I think that's so important. Before I let you go, I always ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So, do you have a memory you want to share with
yes.
us?
Okay, so this was back when home movies were really fun and
Uh
cool.
huh.
I guess like now home movies are just an iPhone, but we had like the big camera. My parents had the big camera, and we loved this movie, That Thing You Do with Tom
Yeah,
Hanks.
I love that movie. My
Such
favorite.
a good movie. It's one of my
Me
favorites.
too.
Okay, glad you know.
Yes.
So me and my brother and my sister, we would reenact like the songs,
Yes.
and we were outside, and we would just have sticks. This is once again makes me feel like I'm like this, like in the country bumpkin. Like we weren't. We just didn't have guitars and stuff. So we had sticks and we played like we were playing the
Uh
guitar.
huh.
And I had sticks like I was playing the
Uh
drums.
huh.
And we were just outside like pretending to sing and to play and doing you doing that thing you do. And I just remember like we loved it. And then we would watch back the home videos and they were so fun.
Yes.
And I was just like the simple, you're just with your siblings. It was like the the TikTok of the older times
That's
when you
right.
would lip sync, but we were lip syncing to like a cassette player on like a, little cassette player thing, and it's playing, and then someone has this massive camera.
Yes.
But that was such like a ton of fun. And that's why I love that movie to this day. Was it's not even just that I loved the movie, but I had such fond memories like that
Yeah.
of reenacting the movie and the scene. So
I
yeah,
love that. Our family also had that really big camera. It sat on the shoulder. So we called it
kids these days
we called it
will
like the
never
news
understand.
station. It was like a news station
Yes,
thing. And my dad always used the fade out and fade in feature. So
stop.
almost every home video, it's like, and we fade
It's like
out. And
cinematic.
then he'd like accidentally like fade out too soon. So he'd fade back in. And we always gave him grief about that, about
I
his
love that
his
so
video
much.
editing style. So
Yeah, and nowadays kids are just using iPhones and TikTok dances,
right.
and we're like,
They don't even
we
know.
had to really work for it
That's
when we were
right.
doing our
It was
stuff.
heavy too.
Because it was heavy.
That's awesome. Well, Joel, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was great having you.
Thank you. Hey, I'm just always appreciative of the fact that you have still continued to do this
Thank you.
because we need content like this, and you are so faithful to what the Lord's called you to do.